And sitting with me now here in studio is the Federal Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience, Eleanor Olszewski. Minister, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this
Well,
morning.
thank you so much for coming in. We're seeing a cooler morning here this morning in the N.W.T, but people here are still thinking about wildfires. It's hard not to at this time of year. There's hundreds burning across the territory. We have an air quality warning in place for Fort Simpson. That's been ongoing for at least a week now, that warning. That community was evacuated earlier this summer, so was Wrigley. Of course, there's fires in British Columbia right now. This is not an easy time to be the Minister of Emergency Preparedness.
It's not an easy time, and I hope you don't mind, but I really want to start by thanking all of the people involved in managing the wildfires in the Northwest Territories and across the country, be it first responders, wildland, structural firefighters, everyone involved in the system, volunteers, First Nations leadership. I know it's such a challenging time. And actually, thank you, too, to people who've opened their homes to evacuees. All of these things are really important, and I really want to express my deep appreciation to everyone involved.
It definitely is an important job, and important for people to be when they step up as well, too, like you said, and welcoming people into their homes. Every year, we're seeing more evacuations. It's kind of become a way of life here in the territory. Is this our new normal? Do you think this is our new normal?
I think it's our new normal. And, I really appreciate how challenging evacuations can be in the north. And I heard a lot about that when I met with Minister McKay a couple of days ago in Yellowknife. And then similarly, when I traveled on to Inuvik and to Tuktoyaktuk, it was really clear to me that the issues with evacuations are paramount. And it's not a surprise in the sense that I've heard that same frustration with respect to the process of evacuation, basically all across the country every time we've had a province or territory or region affected. And so I'm acutely aware of the problems that arise with respect to evacuations.
Yeah, we know that communities are the front line for both evacuations and mitigation and fire response, then the territory. What specific actions is the federal government taking to better support communities and the territorial government?
You know what, maybe I'll just go back a bit to the evacuation piece because we've done, what we're doing is working really closely with provinces and territories to help on evacuations. So in terms of support, the federal government has what we call the humanitarian workforce, and that consists of a number of NGOs. And so they help with respect to evacuations on the ground. When there's a request for that kind of help, we can provide that. And so that would mean things like Red Cross, by way of example, stationed at an evacuation center, helping register people, helping make sure that they're secure, that they have what they need. That's one of the ways that the federal government can offer support as well. Just in terms of how people evacuate, what I heard loud and clear from people in the N.W.T, Minister McKay in particular, is how stressful it was to do an evacuation from, Wrigley and Fort Simpson when they're very, very long and probably pretty traumatic evacuations. And so I know that when I meet with my provincial and territorial counterparts, which I do a number of times per year, that's been front and center with respect to our discussions. And some provinces are looking at having an evacuation center that's already predetermined, so either constructing or using a facility that is maybe dual use, so can be used for something else during other times of the year, but can be used for an evacuation center as well. And that strikes me as quite sensible. I think in terms of evacuation, there needs to be a plan in place well before the wildfire season starts, and that's at the community level, at the regional level as well, so that we're not at the last minute, all of the people involved, making phone calls to find out where people are going to go. So I think, in terms of planning, I think we can and should do better at all levels.
Yeah, I would like to talk about evacuations, specifically accommodations during evacuations. Yellowknife is a hub often for
Yes.
communities who evacuate. Everyone from Fort Simpson came here. But when they come here, they're often sleeping on cots in an arena. There was no air conditioning in that arena this time, and we were in the middle of a heat wave. The lights are on 24 hours a day. Is that acceptable?
Well, and I think I've addressed that in my previous comments. I should start by saying that, that type of situation is first managed by local authorities and then by the province. So in terms of evacuation, there are some tools and levers at the federal government's disposal, but really a lot of that work needs to be done in advance in terms of planning and is best done by local people because they know what facilities there are in the region. They can consider, like some provinces I mentioned, are considering building a specific facility or 2 or 3 in various parts of the province so that there'd always be a place that's in advance known to be the evacuation center. That would be so helpful, even in terms of the NGOs that come to assist with evacuations. If they knew that that was the place, they could also, pre-position and get ready. So I think in terms of evacuations, we all need to rethink, because this is the new normal, and be creative about what systems we can put in place to better manage that. And, having said that, this is a chaotic time, and my heart does go out to everyone, not only in the N.W.T, as I say, but across the country who's been impacted, who's had to evacuate, who's in the process or has evacuated and is very worried about, what they'll face when they get home.
Yeah, so many people still out of their homes today in British Columbia specifically. Yes. You mentioned that there are some levers that the federal government can pull there. What are those levers?
Using the humanitarian workforce to help with evacuations is one. We can help locate accommodation spaces. So we did receive a request for assistance, a formal one, which is the way that provinces and territories engage the federal government and at a time of emergency. And so BC asked us to help them find accommodation. And so that is a lever that provinces and territories can use. We can assist. We can look at federal places, institutions, facilities that might be suitable. So an example might be the Vernon Cadet Camp. That's a place that can house, I believe it's upward of 1,000 people. So that's a way we can assist, is clearing the path for that federal facility to be used for evacuations. And the sooner we can engage with the province or with the territory about what the need is, then the more quickly we can assist. And that's why pre-planning, I think, is fundamentally important.
We don't have a lot of excess infrastructure buildings around
Yes.
here in the Northwest Territories. Is there any federal funds that might exist to help the territory build something like what you're talking about there, a dedicated evacuation center?
There is a stream under the Build Canada Homes fund. There were a number of streams, but there's certainly a stream that can be used in terms of building a facility like that. And there are, I know that there are provinces and territories that have made application, and I know that they intend to use the monies for that specific purpose.
The other thing that comes along with wildfires is air quality.
It is.
And air quality, although we have not seen specific evacuations because of air quality here, it is something that can happen. The territorial government has a program in place right now. You may or may not be familiar with it, which is fine, where they're sending air purifiers and air conditioners to smaller communities to help create some safe air places. They tend to be in rec centers. They tend to be quite small. Is there a federal plan in place anywhere or in works to create safe air shelters in communities that are so often impacted by smoke?
Not that I'm aware of at the provincial or territorial level, but that said, Indigenous Services Canada works very closely with First Nations communities, and I know that through ISK, that kind of support has been provided.
We experts on this show that we've had have talked about the driver behind these fires that are bigger and faster and hotter than before is
Yes.
climate change, specifically climate change caused by fossil fuel use. What would you say to people who believe that your party's policies, like canceling the carbon tax or pushing for a new oil pipeline, contribute to the climate change that is then contributing to these fires?
Well, I guess I would start by saying that we're committed to acting in terms of climate change. We're at a moment in history where it's important for us, insofar as our sovereignty and our economic security and our energy security, to be able to develop some of our resources. And so, as you know, we did enter into an MOU with Alberta, and I'm going to use that as an example because the very first document that was signed, and there have been 5 agreements that have been signed thus far, specified a joint commitment, like on the part of Alberta and on the part of the federal government as well, to make sure that, first of all, that a carbon capture facility went along with a pipeline, but also that MOU covered the development of many things, such as making changes and improving the electricity grid, dealing with carbon pricing in a more effective way, like the industrial price on carbon, and also methane emissions. And so there was a commitment from the time of the very first agreement to address issues that contribute to take action in terms of climate change. And both parties to the agreement, the province and the federal government, did express their commitment to that. And then further agreements along the lines, such as on carbon and on methane, actually put into effect the original agreements contained in the MOU. So we are taking steps, and there are a number of other announcements have been made through ECCC with respect to what we're doing regarding climate change, and also making sure that we preserve lands and waterways as well. The Prime Minister made an announcement a number of months ago with respect to doubling the electricity grid, and so we are going about managing climate change and making changes just in a different way, but it does not mean that we have reduced or lessened our commitment to action on climate.
Do you worry about the excess pressure on your department because of climate change?
I'm always I'm in a department where worry goes along with what I do, and quite honestly, it just does. I mean, we have seen, and absolutely quite rightly, on account of climate change, not just wildfires, but earlier in the month of June, we dealt with flooding in Manitoba, like really catastrophic flooding that caused so much damage. And so we're seeing, like across the board, as you rightly point out, just climate disasters that are increasing in frequency, severity, and we do need to be better prepared in so many ways. And in terms of my portfolio, there's a broad number of things that we're looking at with respect to not only fire suppression and dealing with disasters, but also community resilience.
What are those? What are you looking at in terms of community resilience?
One of the things that we're doing, one of the things we already did actually in terms of resilience is there is financial support for provinces and territories that have been through a disaster. It's called the DFA. It's a Disaster Financial Assistance Program. And that program was revised, updated, amended in 2025, and it specifically provides a stream to help communities, provinces, territories mitigate and take steps to increase resilience to disasters. So that was a change, and it was a welcome change in terms of funds that can be accessed for a very good purpose.
We're coming up to the end here. We've got about 2 minutes left. I know that you are in town right now to talk about volunteer search and rescue. You're making an announcement later this morning. I don't want to scoop you on that or anything here, but I'm wondering what you see as in the North in terms of gaps in search and rescue capabilities.
I think with respect to what happens in the north, and I've just, as I mentioned to you earlier, visited Inuvik and also Tuktoyaktuk as well, and had the opportunity to speak to people, including a ranger in Tuktoyaktuk that had been involved in a number of search and rescues. And it's just, it's pretty obvious from the first couple of seconds of a discussion how very difficult and how different search and rescue is in the north in terms of vastness of space, in terms of the number of people in a given community, sometimes in terms of preparedness as well. And certainly that leads me into the announcement that I'm making later this morning, which is a funding announcement for search and rescue. It's fundamentally important to the north to have a robust system for search and rescue.
It certainly is. It's we spend so much time out on the land here. It's definitely something that we need more of. Minister, we're going to have to leave it there, but I thank you for coming in this morning.
I really appreciate the discussion. Thank you so much.
Eleanor Olszewski is the Federal Minister of Emergency Management and Community Resilience. She's here with me in our Yellowknife studio.